When Dr. Alina Petrov stepped off the plane at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, she did not expect Manila to greet her like an overly enthusiastic golden retriever that had eaten too much sugar. She was a Russian behavioral scientist, serious, logical, raised in the quiet snow of St. Petersburg. Yet she was immediately surrounded by smiles so wide they looked like sunlight grew teeth. A security guard pointed her to the exit. "This way, ma'am. Welcome to the Philippines," he beamed. A janitor waved at her. A child waved at her. Even an elderly lady selling polvoron in the corner waved. Alina found herself lifting her hand awkwardly, waving back to a crowd she had not formally been introduced to. Back home, Russians only waved if they recognized you, maybe. But here, people waved because that was apparently step one in the social ritual. She had just landed, and already her research had begun. She had come here because of one very specific, very confusing question. Why were Filipinos so happy? Statistically, economically, geographically, nothing made sense. Russians lived longer, earned more, and enjoyed colder weather that preserved vegetables better. Filipinos lived on a literal ring of fire, got hit by an average of 20 typhoons a year, and had traffic that doubled as a psychological test. Yet Filipinos consistently ranked among the happiest people on Earth, even in years when global happiness plummeted. Russian scientists, including Alina's department, were baffled. They needed answers. And because she was the youngest on the research team and the only one who seemed curious enough to volunteer, they sent her to the Philippines for 6 months to observe, document, and decode Filipino happiness. She did not yet know that this mission would change her life. Outside the airport, she found her assigned driver, a cheerful man named Marco who was holding a sign that said, "Welcome, Dr. Petrov. Smile is free here." The smiley face had eyelashes. Marco shook her hand with such enthusiasm her arm vibrated. "Doctor, welcome, welcome. You must be hungry. Very long flight from Russia, yes?" "Yes," she nodded. "Very long." "Okay, we stop for Jollibee," he declared. "It's tradition." She had no idea what a Jollibee was, but she assumed it was an important local ritual, possibly religious. It turned out to be a fast food chain with a giant smiling bee mascot that danced outside the entrance. A grown man in a bee suit. Alina blinked at it. Marco ordered chicken joy, spaghetti, and peach mango pie, insisting she should try everything because life is short, don't be boring. She tried the spaghetti first. It was sweet, sweet spaghetti. Her mind short-circuited. "Why is the spaghetti sweet?" she asked. Marco shrugged with the wisdom of a philosopher. "Because it tastes good. Also, because we don't like sad food." That sentence, she would later realize, explained half the country's happiness. After lunch, Marco drove her to her temporary apartment in Quezon City. Cars swerved in all directions with the confidence of people who believed they were invisible. Jeepneys decorated with Bible verses overtook motorcycles that carried entire families. A man crossed the street while texting. Another sold buko right beside a highway. And yet, everyone seemed relaxed. Nobody honked angrily. Nobody rolled down a window to yell. They just flowed. "Is this normal?" she asked. "Normal," Marco nodded. "In Russia, this would start 5 arguments per minute," she muttered. "Aye, Russians pala you're from. That's why," Marco said. "You guys are allergic to small talk." She did not argue. Her apartment was small but comfortable. After settling in, she grabbed her notebook, wrote the date, and began her research notes. Day 1. Filipinos smile excessively. Possibly cultural, possibly emotional contagion. Investigate further. Then she added, food unexpectedly sweet. Bee mascot questionable. The next morning, she started her immersive research. Her first case study was her neighbor, a petite woman named Joy, appropriately named, who introduced herself with the enthusiasm of a game show host. "Hi, new neighbor, I brought you pancit." "Why?" Alina asked. "Because you're new," Joy said, "and because pancit is for long life, and because I cook too much, also because we're neighbors, and because you look like you need it. Russians always look like they need pancit." She said all this in one breath. Alina stared at her. "In Russia, we do not give food to strangers." "Why not?" "Because..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Russians just didn't. It wasn't cultural, it wasn't encouraged, it just wasn't done. Well, that's sad, Joy declared. Okay, come inside later. We play tongits. What is tongits? Card game, loser buys snacks. Alina was beginning to understand that Filipinos did not keep emotional distance. They erased it. Over the next week, she shadowed everyday Filipinos, trying to decode their behavior. She visited wet markets where vendors shouted, "Suki," even though she had never bought from them before. She rode a jeepney and was confused when passengers passed her fare to the driver like an organized assembly line. She learned that if a Filipino said, "Wait lang," it could mean 1 minute, or 1 hour. She discovered that, "I'll be there in 5 minutes" was not a promise but an optimistic prophecy. She saw people laughing in the rain, joking while waiting in long lines, and smiling at strangers as if the default emotion of the nation was delight. She took pages of notes, most of them question marks. One rainy afternoon, she sat with a group of tricycle drivers who took shelter beside a sari-sari store. They invited her to join them without hesitation. They shared boiled peanuts and stories. One driver, Tatay Leo, asked her, "Why do Russians look so serious?" She tried to explain. "It is cold all the time. You stay inside a lot. You do not see the sun. People are not very expressive." "Ah," he nodded with sympathy. "So your weather is sad." She blinked. That was not the scientific explanation she expected. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Filipinos lived in sunlight. Russians lived in clouds. Weather shaped temperament. "In Russia, smiling at strangers seems suspicious," she said. The tricycle drivers burst into laughter. "Ay, kawawa ka naman, doktora!" Another said, "Here, if you don't smile, people think you're the one with problem." She wrote it down. Her research took her from Manila to Cebu, from Cebu to Davao, from barangays to beaches, from markets to fiestas. She documented everything: laughter in adversity, humor during calamity, joy in simple moments. In Leyte, she met a family whose house had been destroyed by a typhoon the year before. They were rebuilding slowly, brick by brick, yet offered her coffee and insisted she sit with them. She asked, "You are smiling, but you lost your home." The father nodded. "Yes, but we didn't lose each other." The mother added, "Problems come, but we solve it together. No one is alone here." She felt something warm inside her chest that she could not quite name. Russian culture valued resilience in silence. Filipino culture valued resilience in togetherness. One night in Cebu, she joined a group of young locals who invited her to a karaoke evening. She refused at first, insisting she was here for scientific research, not parties. But they dragged her anyway with the irresistible force of people who had decided fun was non-negotiable. She watched them sing with no shame, no fear, no self-consciousness. Off-key, loud, emotional, beautiful. They handed her the microphone. She protested. They insisted. She gave in. She sang horribly. They cheered like she won an Olympic medal. At the end of the night, she wrote, "Filipinos do not laugh at you. They laugh with you. Happiness is collective." She noticed that Filipinos rarely ate alone. Meals were shared, plates were shared, even drinks were shared. People invited her to birthday parties even if she met them only an hour ago. In Taguig, a stranger offered her an umbrella during a sudden downpour. In Makati, a guard offered her directions with a smile. In Bohol, a family insisted she join their Sunday lunch even though she was clearly a confused foreigner. She realized something crucial. Filipinos attach joy to community. Everything was done as a group. Even sadness became manageable when shared. She began to see the world differently. But there were more serious observations too. She learned that many Filipinos worked long hours, often overseas, away from families. Many endured hardships but still found reasons to smile. The happiness was not naivety. It was a choice. A deliberate resistance to hardship. A cultural tradition passed through generations. A way of surviving by celebrating. Russians survived through stoicism. Filipinos survived through joy. One evening at a quiet beach in Palawan, she sat with a fisherman named Mang Dado. His boat had been damaged recently, forcing him to temporarily stop fishing. Yet he talked to her with warmth. "How can you smile when you cannot fish?" she asked. "Ah," he said, "because the sea always comes back. Tide goes out, tide comes in. Life is like that. No reason to be angry at things you can't control." She wrote that down too. She slowly stopped being the observer and became part of the community. She learned to say kain tayo. She learned to say po, which made her sound overly polite. She learned that sige na was both a command and a plea. She learned that when someone said bahala na, it wasn't carelessness, it was faith. She learned to laugh more, to smile more, to talk to strangers, to share food, to appreciate the sun. She even learned to love the humidity, or at least tolerate it. She wrote to her research team back in Russia. Preliminary conclusion: Filipino happiness is not irrational. It is deeply embedded in cultural practices, social bonds, and collective optimism. It is a survival tool, a national psychology of resilience. Her Russian colleagues responded with confusion. "Please provide measurable factors." She stared at her laptop and said aloud, "How do you measure joy?" They did not understand. They wanted graphs. Filipinos gave her karaoke. They wanted statistics. Filipinos gave her pancit. They wanted data. Filipinos gave her community. Science could not quantify everything. On her final month, she attended a fiesta in a small barangay in Batangas, where she experienced the full force of Filipino happiness. People danced in the streets. There were games, contests, endless food. She met people who had little money but huge smiles. A group of children grabbed her hands and pulled her to dance. An elderly woman taught her how to eat suman properly. A group of men teased her about her Russian accent and asked if snow tasted salty. She laughed more in that one day than she usually laughed in a year. When the fiesta ended, the barangay captain asked her, "So, Doctora, did you find what you're looking for?" She looked around. People cleaning together. Children still playing. Music fading. Stars above. She said softly, "I think so." Happiness was not a thing you owned. It was a thing you shared. On her last night in the Philippines, she sat alone on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker. She thought about how she was when she arrived, quiet, serious, distant, and how she was now, still quiet, still serious, but softer somehow. More open, more alive. She didn't just study Filipino happiness, she absorbed it. It became part of her. She realized something important. The answers she would bring home were not scientific formulas, but human truths. The next morning, she packed her bags. Her neighbors gathered to say goodbye. Joy hugged her tightly and placed a container of lumpia in her hands. "For your flight," Marco appeared with a Jollibee plush toy. "So you don't forget." The tricycle drivers arrived too, giving her a small keychain shaped like a jeepney. She was overwhelmed. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling. "You will come back, yes?" Joy asked. "I hope so," she whispered. On the plane home to Russia, she opened her notebook and wrote her final entry for part 1 of her research. Filipinos are happy because they choose connection over isolation, laughter over frustration, gratitude over complaints, resilience over defeat. They are happy because they do life together. When Dr. Alina Petrov landed back in St. Petersburg, she expected to slip quietly into her old life like a glove she had forgotten at home. Instead, she felt as if she had returned wearing clothes 3 sizes too small. Everything was colder than she remembered, not just the air, but the silence. Russians walked quickly, eyes forward, expressions neutral. Nobody waved at her, nobody smiled, nobody offered pancit. Even the airport announcements sounded serious, as if the speakers were saying, "Welcome home, please calm down." Her taxi driver grunted when she entered the car. Not a word, not a smile, just a grunt. After 6 months in the Philippines, the absence of warmth felt like getting hit with ice water. She tried smiling at him, a habit she had developed unintentionally. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror, confused. In Russia, smiling at strangers meant one of 2 things. You wanted something, or you were unstable. "Hello?" she tried cheerfully. He blinked twice. "Hello?" he said slowly, as if responding to someone speaking alien language. As the car moved through the city, she noticed how quiet it was. Snowflakes fell gently, muffling sound. Buildings looked stern. People walked with purpose. Nobody said "Opo." Nobody offered food. Nobody shouted "Suki" at her. The silence felt too sharp. 6 months in the Philippines had tuned her ears to laughter. Now, home sounded muted. Her parents met her at the door of their apartment, embracing her tightly. "How was your research trip?" her mother asked, examining her daughter's face as if checking for damage. "Warm," Alina said. "Very warm." Her father raised an eyebrow. "You look different," he said. "Different how?" "You are glowing," he said suspiciously, as if she might be hiding a light bulb under her coat. Her mother nodded. "Yes, and smiling. Too much smiling." Alina laughed. "Is that bad?" "Not bad," her mother said. "Just unusual." Over dinner, her parents noticed the second change. "Why did you call us Po earlier?" her father asked, squinting. She froze mid-bite. "Did I?" "Yes," he said. "You said, 'Yes, Po, I'm fine.'" "Why Po? What does it mean?" "Respect," she explained. "A habit." Her father seemed impressed. "Ah, Russians could use that." On her first day back at the research lab, she walked in and greeted her colleagues with the Filipino-style cheerful warmth she had absorbed. "Good morning," she said brightly. Her team collectively flinched. Dr. Kravchenko looked at her as if she had committed a scientific crime. "You sound enthusiastic," he said cautiously. "I had coffee," she lied. She had not had coffee. She simply had 6 months of Filipino sunshine stuck in her soul. The team gathered in the conference room for her debriefing. Charts were displayed on the screen. Graphs were ready. Equations were prepared. Her colleagues expected data, metrics, statistical conclusions. She inhaled deeply and began. "Filipinos are happy because they choose community," she said. "They share everything. They laugh together. They find joy in the small moments." Her colleagues nodded slowly, waiting for numbers to appear. She continued. "They treat strangers like friends. Happiness is not solitary there. It is collective." The head researcher raised a hand. Yes, but how do we measure it? What is the numerical breakdown?" She paused. "There is no number," she said softly. "Happiness is not a quantity. It is a culture." A long silence followed. Someone coughed. Someone adjusted their glasses. Someone whispered, "Is she okay?" She did not take offense. She simply felt a strange peace. She knew the truth even if they didn't understand it yet. After the meeting, she walked through the city, noticing how different her perception had become. The cold bit at her cheeks, but she did not mind it as much. She passed a group of elderly women waiting for a bus, their shoulders hunched, faces stern. Instinctively, she smiled at them. They stared at her, confused. One whispered to the other, "Why is she smiling? Does she know us?" Another whispered back, "Maybe she's selling something." Alina nearly burst into laughter. She visited her local grocery store. The cashier scanned her items quietly without making eye contact. Out of habit, Alina asked, "How are you today?" The cashier froze, not knowing how to respond. Fine," she said as if answering a riddle. "That's good," Alina said brightly. The cashier stared at her receipt long after the transaction ended, processing what had just happened. As she walked home, she saw a man struggling to carry heavy bags of groceries through the snow. Without thinking, she rushed to help him. "Let me help you," she said. "Why?" he asked suspiciously. "Because it's heavy," she said. "Yes," he said slowly. And, you look tired." "So?" She almost laughed. Helping strangers was normal in the Philippines. Here it was considered a sign of hidden motives. "Still," she insisted. Eventually, he let her carry one bag. He walked next to her, confused but quiet. When they reached his building, he said awkwardly, "Thank you, I think." "You're welcome, Po," she replied. He blinked. "What is Po?" She smiled. "A good habit." Over the next weeks, her Filipino habits continued to confuse everyone. She offered snacks to coworkers, even during serious meetings. She said "kain tayo" to people who had no intention of eating. She held doors for strangers. She greeted neighbors in the hallway. She waved at children. She started conversations with taxi drivers. At first, people reacted with suspicion. Russians were not unfriendly by nature. They were simply reserved. They did not open up easily. But slowly, something happened. One cold afternoon, she brought pancit to the lab. "Try it," she said. "It's for long life." Her co-workers exchanged looks. "Will it really extend our lives?" one asked. "No," she admitted, "but it tastes good." They hesitated but eventually tried it. Someone said, "Not bad." Someone else said, "Actually delicious." Someone even asked for the recipe. It was a small victory. Another day, she brought a portable speaker and introduced her colleagues to karaoke. At first, they refused. Russians were not comfortable singing publicly unless intoxicated. But after some persuasion, one scientist tried singing a slow, dramatic song. He was terrible. Everyone laughed, gently, not mockingly, and something cracked open in the room. Someone else sang next, then someone else. Soon the lab was filled with off-key singing and unexpected laughter. It felt bizarre. It felt wonderful. Her influence spread quietly. One morning, she noticed two coworkers greeting each other with smiles instead of the usual head nod. Another day, she saw someone hold the elevator for a stranger. She overheard someone say, "Kain tayo," in a joking way. Russian winter was still cold, but pockets of warmth began appearing in places where nobody expected it. At home, she taught her parents how to make lumpia. They rolled it incorrectly at first, too stiff and too neat, but eventually they learned. Her mother laughed more. Her father told jokes he hadn't told in years. They invited their neighbors for dinner, a rare act in their building. They served pancit and lumpia. The neighbors brought borscht. Cultures blended on the table. People who had never spoken before were suddenly talking, laughing, sharing stories. It was the first communal dinner the building had seen in decades. Alina realized something. Filipino happiness was not something you studied. It was something you lived, something that spread, something that multiplied when shared. But there was a challenge still waiting for her. Her research team asked her to present her findings at a national psychology conference in Moscow. Hundreds of professionals would be there. She would be expected to discuss measurable data, standardized variables, and scientifically supported theories. Instead, she had stories, experiences, laughter, warmth. She wasn't sure anyone would take her seriously, but she went. On the day of the conference, she stood before the audience, her notes trembling in her hands. She inhaled slowly. "For 6 months," she began, "I studied one of the happiest cultures on earth, the Filipino people." A few eyebrows lifted. "I expected data," she continued. "I found something deeper." She spoke of community, connection, humor, resilience, gratitude. She told them about karaoke nights, tricycle drivers, fiestas, families who shared even when they had little. She quoted phrases she had learned: Bayanihan, kain tayo, bahala na, tawanan lang. She explained how Filipinos turned hardship into bonding, how they coped with storms, literal and emotional, through collective love. Some scientists frowned. Some looked intrigued. Some looked emotional. At the end of her speech, she said, "Filipinos are happy not because life is easy for them, but because they refuse to face life alone." The room went silent. Then someone clapped. Then a few more. Then the entire hall applauded. After the presentation, many approached her. One scientist said, "I never thought of happiness this way." Another said, "Maybe we are too serious." A professor told her, "I want to visit the Philippines now." Someone else said, "Perhaps Russians need community too." Her research spread across academic circles. Universities invited her to speak. Articles were written about her findings. The Russian public responded with curiosity and something else she had not expected: enthusiasm. People started organizing small gatherings in their neighborhoods. Karaoke bars became slightly more popular. Some Russians even adopted the habit of offering food to guests as if channeling their inner Filipino. Yet the biggest change happened at home. One snowy evening, while walking back to her apartment, she heard laughter coming from the courtyard. Curious, she followed the sound and saw a group of neighbors gathered around a small grill. They were cooking shashlik and singing horribly. Someone waved her over. "Alina, come, join us." She felt her chest warm. Russians rarely socialized outdoors in winter, but here they were, inspired by her stories, acting like a little barangay. Her parents were there too. Her father proudly served pancit to confused neighbors. Her mother taught someone how to roll lumpia. The neighbors laughed, talked, shared food. Children ran around. Snow fell gently, illuminated by the courtyard lights. It reminded her of her last night in the Philippines. The same warmth, the same community, the same joy. She realized something profound. She had brought the Philippines home with her. Not the physical place, but the feeling. Weeks turned into months, and the changes continued. Her lab officially added a course called Collective Happiness Dynamics based on her findings. She became a beloved lecturer, known for her heartfelt teachings and occasional use of Tagalog words that confused students but amused them. She still received messages from her Filipino friends. Joy sent her pictures of pancit. Marco sent her videos of the dancing Jollibee mascot. The tricycle drivers sent her jokes. She sent back photos of snow, surprising them every time. One day, she received a letter from the barangay in Batangas she had visited. It said, "Doctora Alina, you are always welcome here. You are part of our community." She smiled so wide her cheeks ached. She hung the letter above her desk. Then something unexpected happened. One summer, she received a grant to continue her research, this time not to study Filipino happiness, but to study how cross-cultural exchange could improve emotional well-being in colder countries. The success of her talks had inspired other nations to consider adopting some Filipino practices. She became the unofficial ambassador of Filipino joy in Russia. She decided to commemorate everything she learned by creating a community happiness initiative in her city. It started small, a weekend potluck in the park. People brought food, music, laughter. They shared meals with strangers. Children played. Elders told stories. Someone even brought a microphone for impromptu karaoke. It was a simple gathering, but it felt revolutionary. People who never spoke to their neighbors were suddenly bonding. As the initiative grew, she added more elements. Community cleanups, group exercise mornings, free food sharing tables, storytelling circles. People attended, people laughed, people opened up. The icy walls Russians often kept around themselves slowly melted. One evening, an elderly woman approached her during one of the community events. "My husband passed away last year," she said softly. "I was lonely. I didn't speak to anyone for months. But because of these gatherings, I found friends again. Thank you." Alina felt tears sting her eyes. She hugged the woman, something she would not have done before her time in the Philippines. The woman hugged her back tightly. It was then that Alina realized the full impact of what she had brought home. Filipino happiness was not just about being cheerful. It was about refusing isolation, about involving others in your life, about choosing warmth even when the world felt cold. And now, hundreds of Russians were experiencing it too. One night, alone in her apartment, watching the snow fall outside her window, she opened her old research notebook. On the last page, she wrote, "Filipino happiness is not a mystery. It is a gift, and when shared, it becomes a bridge between worlds." She closed the notebook and looked around her cozy home, filled with small reminders of the Philippines. Jollibee plushie, pancit recipe on the fridge, jeepney keychain by the door. She whispered to the empty room, "Salamat." Outside, laughter drifted in from the courtyard. Russian laughter, warm, unreserved, shared. For the first time in her life, she felt that same joy blooming inside her again, just like in the Philippines. The world could be cold, but happiness, real happiness, was something you could bring with you anywhere, and she did.